What up, guys? Welcome to today's podcast. Today's podcast, we have Jessa Khan, who is going to be competing at one of ONE FC's grappling matches coming up, which will be available on Amazon Prime. If you guys have never actually watched a ONE FC show, it's available on Amazon Prime if you've got it. So it's pretty cool. But she'll be fighting over there at the arena there in Singapore, which is super cool. Big stage for grappling. We had the founder of ONE on the podcast before, and again, he's trying to integrate not just like MMA, but do all of these different martial arts. You'll see kickboxing, you'll see MMA, you'll see grappling. I think it's a pretty cool thing to give like some of these other martial arts in their pure form another stage to do their thing on, so it's super cool. So we're gonna get into the podcast with her. It was a little bit of a short one. I guess something happened where she was basically tightly packed between teaching classes and some other stuff. So we got 30 minutes with her. So at the end of the podcast, Eugene and I are going to do a little bit extra to fill out a little bit more time in there. And we'll talk about some ideas related to what we talk about in the podcast with her. So again, hopefully you guys enjoy the episode. And as always, big thanks to our sponsors for helping make the podcast happen. Charlotte's Web CBD. It's one of my favorite supplements for recovery. It's one of those things where, again, as you train more, as you get older, recovery is like one of the biggest things that you become obsessed with. Talk to any older person, right? And when I say older, I don't even mean like old. I mean like you get anywhere close to 30 and you talk to anybody that's been training for a couple of years, right? You're still a young man, right? You're getting close to like middle age, but you're still in good shape, right? But you think about someone that's close to 30, any of you guys listening to this, you start approaching that and all of a sudden things just feel different. You talk to anyone as they get older, like, what'd you have to adjust? And like you have to adjust your training volume. You have to take breaks a little bit more. You have to be more mindful of sleep, less alcohol. I mean, I think about that all the time. There's things that I did when I was young. I mean, bro, I could go out and drink, hang out with the guys, whatever, have 3 hours of sleep, wake up, smash a protein shake, go train, and just get after it.
Yep.
Now, I mean, if I had first off, there are no nights out getting wasted. That doesn't happen anymore. It's like I have a drink, maybe two, but like that's it. For some of the people that came to the Jiu-Jitsu camp, I made us some old fashions with tequila.
Ooh, nice.
Instead of bourbon. But anyway, like had one of those, and like I'm good. That's it.
Yeah.
And then even the next day, I still felt it a little bit, right? So again, you just feel different. But anyway, all the things that you could get away with when you're younger, you then have to tighten up. And if anybody's young listening to this, when I mean young, like let's say like sub like 25, under 25,
like 30 and below 30.
Yeah, anywhere in that range. It's so funny because they don't know because they haven't felt it, but they're like, oh, whatever, bro. I remember there was a guy on YouTube who he made a comment and he was talking about the fact that I was talking about injuries in one of my videos, and he's like, why are you guys always injured? Like, you have injuries. Like, I've never been injured. He was like basically giving this thing about why he trains better than everybody else. Whatever. As I asked him, I said, well, how old are you, bro? It's 19. I'm like, you're 19. You've been training for 3 years. Like, come talk to. I just said, just talk to me when you're 30. I was like, because I said the same stuff. I remember when I was younger, I was like, oh, whatever, man. I'm going to stretch. I'm going to shrink. I'll be fine. You just get older. But anyway, going back to that, I know it's a big, long ramble, but going to the point, recovery becomes something that you get really focused on because you realize how important it is. If you can do something to move the needle in respects to your recovery and your recovery ability, you understand how important that is for your training, right? Your recovery, it basically gives you a bigger budget for training.
Sure.
We talked about that with Eli on the podcast, right? The better our recovery, like the bigger our recovery, you can think your recovery is how much money you have, right? That allows you then to spend for training, right? If your recovery budget's really short, you don't have a lot of money to spend, or you don't have a lot of energy to spend for your training. But if you build that recovery up, right, now you got a bigger budget to work with, you can go use it to spend for more training. And so one of the things that I like to throw into the mix, which I think makes a big difference in my recovery, is CBD. I'm going to be using it for several years now. If you guys have never used it before, I encourage you to just try it and see what you think. And if you do use it, my encouragement is just to make sure you use it from a reputable company because it's not FDA approved. So again, if you are not using it from a company that is reputable, you could be taking it not really knowing what's in the bottle or the gummy or whatever sort of method you're taking it in. Again, if you guys want to check out some CBD, check out Charlotte's Web. Their website is charlottesweb.com. The promo code to support the podcast and get a good discount is Chewjitsu20, CHEWJITSU 20 for 20% off the order. And again, they have a lot of different varieties of products, everything from your basic pure not THC, CBD product, right? That comes in like a little tincture. They have gummies. They have products that are sort of CBD products mixed with nutritional supplements to give you a different desired effect. And also they have THC free products. Again, several different options there. Their sort of claim on that is that if you use them, like let's say if you were getting tested by USADA, then you would not test positive for THC. So again, do your research on the type of testing if that's something that you are subjected to and you have to do. But again, if you guys want to check out their stuff, charlottesweb.com. Also, thanks to Matt over at Epic Roll. EpicRollBJJ.com is the website. Again, Matt makes a variety of jiu-jitsu gear and apparel, everything from gis, rash guards, shorts, to hoodies, joggers, t-shirts, the whole thing. I wear his t-shirts a lot all the time. If you watch some of my videos, you see him worn a lot. And then on top of that, I'm working currently on getting some new rash guards made. So we'll have some new Jiu-Jitsu gear coming out in the near future from Epic Roll. And again, I pair up with Matt because I like the stuff that he does. You know, again, there are people out there that make the products and things like that, but I think the quality of the products is good. And I also like the amount of customer service that Matt puts into it. Again, customer service is one of those things where it's almost it's a forgotten thing, right? Like nobody really puts any effort into it, but to me it's important. So again, if anybody's ever dealt with Matt on any level, he's pretty solid in that respect. And so again, I like partnering up with him. So I'm going to have some new gear coming out, just for throwing that out there to you guys to let you know in the future to be prepared for that coming up soon. But again, in the meantime, if you'd like to check out some of his stuff, get some new gis, rash guards, shorts to train in, sort of on a side tangent, like one of my favorite things to do anytime I need a little boost of like motivation or sort of inspiration to go train, I like buying new gear. It sounds silly, but again, if I get a new pair of like rash guards and shorts, I want to go train. If I get a new gi, I want to go train. If with lifting weights, if we get a new bar or a new piece of equipment, I want to go use it, right? So again, that novelty is kind of fun. And so again, if you want some new gear, go check out Matt's website at epicrollbjj.com, and you can save 15% on your order using the promo code Chewjitsu, CHEWJITSU at checkout. And if you want to support the podcast directly and get access to the library of content that we've created for the podcast as a sort of a return for your investment, you can do so by going to our Patreon website at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. When you join up, you'll get access to that library I spoke of, which is full of everything from recorded rolling sessions. There are warm-up routines for jiu-jitsu, stretching routines from jiu-jitsu, seminars that I've recorded, podcast extras where it's you and me and me and Eugene going over a particular idea, sharing it with you guys. Even with our guests, there's a podcast extra with each one of those guests we've had on there, with most of them anyway. And so again, all that's access you get access to, and you get an ad-free version of this podcast, which again is available to you at our Patreon, patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. And last but not least, guys, if you want to get my daily email, you can do so by going to my website at chewjitsu.net/join. When you join up, you'll get some exclusive ebooks that I give away as a gift to you for joining up. One is on building a game plan. One is on ideas on active drilling, something we'll talk about in this podcast, right? Active drilling, it's a really important idea when you are trying to implement new techniques into your game. So that's an idea for you. You can get access to those by joining up. And then you'll get my daily email where I send ideas that I'm actually sending out an email sequence where we're talking about how to implement new techniques into your game. And I'm giving the strategies and ideas that I personally use and that I put together for my students to help people rapidly put in new techniques into the game. It's very simple, but there's some really useful ideas that could be hopefully helpful to you. Those sets of emails will be gone by the time you join up. But again, there'll be other stuff in there. And I also give exclusive deals through the email list that I don't give anywhere else. And so again, if you want to check that out, go to my website at chewjitsu.net/join, CHEWJITSU.net/join, JOIN, and you can check that out. So guys, with that said, let's get to talking with Jessa. Cool. So thanks for being on the podcast. Sort of out of curiosity, how did you get started with jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, so I first started jiu-jitsu in Hawaii. My dad was in the Navy, so I kind of moved around a lot. But whenever I moved to Hawaii, that's when I started jiu-jitsu. Prior to that, I was actually doing karate, and we were actually looking for a karate school while I was in Hawaii, but I just never found any like academies that I liked. And then just in that same plaza, we ended up seeing a jiu-jitsu school, and my dad just ended up taking me there. He just was like, "Oh, this is a different martial art. Maybe let's try this," and I ended up liking it from the first day.
Did your dad train as well?
No, so he actually started after me, but he got his black belt before me.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, just
Cool.
because I had to go through all the kid belts and then all the adult belts. But yeah, it's really awesome. A bunch of my family members did it. Like my mom did it, my dad did it, siblings did it. But I'm pretty much like the only one that like stuck with it and like made a career out of it.
That's awesome. And then how did you end up training with the Mendez Brothers and AOJ? How did that whole thing happen?
Yeah, so AOJ opened up in 2012. Prior to that, that same year, that was the first time I went to California and fought Pan Kids, and that's still one of the biggest tournaments for kids. And during that time, there was actually another jiu-jitsu school that was really big. It's called A Team. I don't know if you're familiar with it. I think it was
I'm not familiar with it.
Associate, but
Okay.
that actually used to be like the main school that everyone would want to move to. And then so back then I was like, oh, when I get older, I want to live in California, train at A Team. And then July, AOJ opened up. Mendez Brothers had their school, and I was always following their journey online. So whenever I seen that they finally opened an academy, and it was in California, and I seen some of my friends that were going from A Team to there, I was like, oh, I want to go to this school. So yeah, that's kind of like how that happened. Like I said, my dad was in the Navy, so I couldn't live in California and train at AOJ just yet. In 2016, I officially moved there and started training full time. But prior to that, I would come every summer and stay with who is now my boyfriend, Zach. I would stay with his family every summer prior.
How old were you when you got started training?
I started training when I was 8.
When you were 8. Wow, is that the only kind of sport that you did or martial art that you did growing up?
No, so I did karate, I did soccer, did ballet, t-ball, and then after I started jiu-jitsu, I started wrestling, then judo.
Nice. Do you think so? Any others besides, obviously wrestling has a great carryover. Any other sports you feel like helped your jiu-jitsu along?
I'd say maybe soccer. I was actually really good at soccer, but I had to choose because I had soccer and jiu-jitsu on the same days. So I had to choose which one I wanted to do, and I like jiu-jitsu a lot more. But I definitely feel like soccer helped me. Just it helps with footwork. I had really good speed with soccer, so I feel like that helps translate to jiu-jitsu.
I have a really random question, and this just popped up. So, grapplers, we have certain things where if we spot them out, we can see like a cauliflower ear, that sorts of things. You have really pretty nails. I'm looking at her nails. They're nice nails, and so I'm curious. Like, do you roll with longer nails, or do you like keep them trimmed during certain periods?
I mean,
or whatever?
I normally keep them trimmed. I still go to like the nail salon, but I don't really get like acrylic or anything because that'll come off. But right now they're just really grown out right now, and I need to cut them. But yeah.
I know it's a random thing. I didn't know if you had if there was something you did, because I'm like, to me, I'm looking at that, I'm thinking like the gi just ripping and bending them back and everything else. I just didn't know if there was maybe you had a secret that you could share with women listening, here's how to do it. Okay. Because I always tell I had one woman that came in that trained with us one time, and she's really upset, and she's kind of told her well, you can't have super long nails and train. She's like, but why? I was like, well, because they can, people's eyes, and they'll get bitten back and everything else. So yeah, random thing. So with when you're training with the Mendez brothers, curious. So we were training in other gyms and stuff. You went there. What was one of the biggest differences? Because obviously you've done very well for yourself as far as competition goes. You've won world championships. You've climbed the ranks and stuff and won at each one of those. What was one of the biggest differences training there with them, maybe versus some of the other gyms that you've trained at or visited or whatever it might be?
I think just the overall structure. The Mendez brothers, they're the people that I wanted to be like, and they've already gone through what I need to go through. So I feel like that was kind of the difference between my other professors. You know, I've been to like so many schools just since I've moved around. But you know, most of those people, they weren't like full-time like competitors where they're like making a huge name for them. You know, they did have a successful school, but it's not that they had a successful like jiu-jitsu career. But the Mendez Brothers, I feel like they did, and that's someone who I wanted to be like. And I think that's how it drew so many kids from different schools to start joining AOJ, because they're like, oh, like they're the people that we want to be like. They're young, they're black belt world champions, you know, they're just very successful, and that's who I wanted to be like. So I thought it was only right to join a school that had mentors that were like that. And, you know, they helped me through so much during this journey. You know, it's a long journey and you can't do it by yourself. And, you know, anytime I have questions or anything that I face, like they kind of have an answer to it just because they've experienced it already.
What's one thing maybe they do uniquely well from all the places you've been and traveled? What's like maybe one thing besides, I mean, they're incredible grapplers. They've accomplished a lot. What's maybe one thing that they do unique to them that you found very helpful, like for your jiu-jitsu?
For my jiu-jitsu, yeah, like I said, just they've done the things I'm going through right now, but also I'd say their marketing is really good, and it's helping get jiu-jitsu like put out there on the world. You know, now most people, they want to copy like the AOJ school. They want to make sure that it looks nice and presentable, and I feel like that's something that they kind of changed throughout the jiu-jitsu community. You know, most of the times you're used to that like MMA style of like blue mats, like a cage and all that stuff, MMA stuff. But yeah, now I feel like looks a little bit classy now.
Yeah, they have like the white mats, and like they have like little trees in the background stuff. I've seen some of their
Yeah, we've got some artwork there.
Yeah. It's
very
cool.
aesthetic.
Yes.
And then with your parents, like when you decided to do this stuff full time, you know, again, they trained it, but you know, parents a lot of times have certain aspirations for their kids, right? So were they supportive of you going full time, or were they like, I don't know about this? Like, what was that conversation like for you guys?
Yeah, so I've always really enjoyed it. Probably when I became an orange belt, so when I was like, you know, 12 or so, that's when I really started to think that I wanted to do jiu-jitsu as like a full-time career. You know, they've always been very supportive, like ever since day one, no matter what sport it was, they always had my back and they're willing to support me. I think something that helped like convince them that like I could actually like do this as a career and be good at it and be successful was that I was already having some success as a kid. So that kind of gave them a little bit of reassurance that I'm going to be okay if I like stick with it and like make a career out of it. I think it'd be a little different if I just kept constantly losing and I wasn't like actually getting better. Then you know that'd be concerning, because I see it, because I teach jiu-jitsu to kids now at AOJ, and I see it happening all the time where there's kids that are like 8 years old. They're like homeschooled, staying at AOJ all day, and they already decide that's what they want to do. And then I see some kids that want to be like that, but like, and losing will happen to anyone, but it's just like if you're constantly in that cycle of like losing and like you're not actually getting better, but you kind of want to just say you're homeschooled and be a jiu-jitsu athlete just because the other kids are doing it, but like really you're gonna fall off. So like that's something that I see happening a lot. But yeah, I think I just gave my parents that reassurance that I'm gonna actually do good, because if I'm already doing good now, imagine where I can be at the best jiu-jitsu gym in the world. So that's pretty much what convinced them. So yeah, I was about orange belt when I pretty much decided to dedicate more days to jiu-jitsu throughout the week. I was still going to regular school at the time. And then 2016, we moved. I started high school, and that's when I started being homeschooled all of high school, because I started becoming a juvenile, getting my blue belt. And I was like, if I start coming into adult belt, I need to definitely dedicate more time, because I'm going to get to the black belt fast. So if I want to do it, like now's the time. So I think that's definitely what helped me reach my goals faster, you know, being homeschooled. I got to train a lot more and just have more time to do other stuff that can help with my jiu-jitsu.
How much are you training? Like what's a typical week for you? Even you know, are you doing some strength conditioning, like diet? What are you kind of keeping track of? What's your training schedule look like, you know, on a weekly basis?
Yeah, so I normally train from like 7 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. And those are 3 different classes. So the first class will be a competition training. So that's sparring for 1 hour. And then normally Professor Yi, he like plans out the training, like depending if he wants it to be intense, if he wants to be like a little bit easier that day. So he kind of chooses depending on like how he thinks everyone else is feeling throughout the week. And then after that, we have a regular fundamentals class, which he teaches. That's just a normal class, drills and sparring. And then the third class is a no-gi class taught by Koabate, and it's just normal class, drills and sparring. So I normally train 7 to 10:30, and then Monday and Wednesday and Friday I normally work out from 12 to 1. Today I'm not able to because I had a couple stuff I need to get done, but normally I do that, and then I normally teach at AOJ from 2:30 to like 7:30.
You're on the mats like pretty much all day.
Yeah, that's why it's hard to find time because I'm normally at AOJ doing something.
Yeah. How does it like, what keeps you kind of interested in it? I mean, obviously winning is a great motivator. What's like really interesting to you about jiu-jitsu now after you've won a world title, you achieved a black belt? What's kind of still keeping you focused?
I think it's just the impact that you can leave on people's lives. I feel like whether I'm competing or not, like especially this year, like I had a pretty inspiring story, like overcoming some losses and other stuff that was going on in my life, and I was able to accomplish one of the biggest goals in jiu-jitsu. And that's like a great story that can also impact people's lives to keep motivating them. And then also I teach a bunch of little girls, and I get to see from the first day of like how they're doing, and they want to be like me, and that's like super inspiring because that's all I wanted to do ever since I started jiu-jitsu. I never had a female presence in my jiu-jitsu journey at all. It was always male, and that's something I wish I had when I was younger. So now I'm happy that I can give back to the jiu-jitsu community and finally be that person for some of these other little girls now.
That's cool. You were talking about losses and everything else. Have you had any particular period? I know that you're still relatively young and still even have a lot more years left in your career, but I'm sure you've had some rough ones. Have you had any particular period that's been exceptionally difficult so far that you had to deal with some stuff to get over it in order to continue to press on like you are?
Yeah, so I've been for about 3 years now, and I'd say the first 2 years were really difficult for me. I guess it was just really hard because, like I said, while I was a kid and while I was going through the dot belts, like blue, purple, brown, I was very dominant, and I never really had anyone in the division to challenge me. And once I got to the black belt, then it's like every fight I had was super challenging because it's a black belt. And that was something that it was hard for me to face. And I was still overcoming that. And, I was never used to losing like constantly, like tournament after tournament. And I'm just like, after so many losses, like it makes you think like, should you still keep doing it? Like, it seems like even when you're going back to the academy, you're fired up to improve and get better for the next one. You end up just losing again. So then, you start thinking about all these negative thoughts. And then just for me thinking like that, it made me think that training's not fun anymore either. Like, because now I'm putting so much stress on myself to try to win. And yeah, so I was going through a rough time because, I didn't really know how to handle that. So last year, I actually took a couple months off of competing because of that. I fought the first 2 worlds, and I fought terrible. It was when I didn't even really want to like be there because I kept losing at the other tournaments leading up to worlds, and then I wasn't enjoying training. So both 2021 worlds in December and 2022 worlds last year at the Pyramid, I fought so bad because I didn't really want to be there, and I wasn't training like properly like I should have been. And yeah, but after I took a couple months off from, I think right after Worlds, so like June to September, and then during that time I just focused on like loving training again, and I started feeling a little bit more confident in myself. So then I ended up making a comeback. September I ended up doing a Jiu-Jitsu Con last year, and then I did like 2 other tournaments, and I won them, and like I felt really good, and I had a good performance. So that's kind of like what pushed me to, get back on that competition train. And also it's like the people that you surround yourself with. You know, at AJ, it's a very competitive environment. You know, everyone that you're with all day, like they're all motivated, they all want to train hard and win all these competitions. So like it makes you feel a certain way if you're not thinking like that either. So they're kind of what helped me get through and like keep pushing. I knew that there were times where I really wanted to stop training, I wanted to stop competing already, but I knew that like if I did that and I'd look back now, that I'd regret it. So I just thought that like, you know, all those years of hard work, all those sacrifices that my parents made, that I made, like it wouldn't be worth it if I was to just, you know, stop now without fully giving 100% of what I'm capable of. And that's something that I fixed. And, you know, I was able to win worlds this year. And that's like the biggest goal that anyone has in jiu-jitsu. So yeah, I'm just really proud of myself for overcoming that.
What did you do in your time off? I mean, did you train at all? Did you just try to separate yourself from
Oh,
jujitsu?
no, I pretty much had the same schedule. I was still training. It's just
So you're still training.
I
Okay.
just took a break from competition.
I got you. Okay.
But I just tried to really focus on like getting better in the academy first before just like every weekend just throwing myself in the tournament just because everyone else is doing it or something. You know, so I just really took the time to, you know, actually get better at jiu-jitsu, evolve my game, you know, feel more confident about myself, about my jiu-jitsu game. That way I can have like a better showing at the tournament.
Well, what were you doing specifically? Is there like, were you starting to just hone in on certain positions or going through like videos or film of kind of your previous competitions? How do you go about like finding, you know, discovering that, hey, I have a hole in part of my game right here, and how you go about fixing it? What was something you did?
Yeah, I like to review old matches. Normally Professor Gee's always there to like coach me throughout my matches. So even then there's stuff that he'll point out like, oh, like you need to work on this because like that's why you lost that match, or you know. But also in training, I have a lot of good girls to train with that are my size, so you know it gets very competitive. And you know, I just train with them, and in training for me, since I wasn't doing any competitions, I set like small goals for myself within the training at AOJ. You know, like some goals could be like, oh, we're going against this person. My goal is not to get swept by this person, or my goal is to try to submit this person in 2 minutes. You know, just small little goals like that, and that's what helped me.
And then following that, sort of talking about some of your competitions and stuff that you've done, do you have these are just sort of quick questions. Do you have a particular like position, your favorite position in jiu-jitsu?
Favorite position?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm typically a guard player,
Mm-hmm.
so I
Do
normally
you have a
try to
particular guard that you pull on people that you try to get them into first, or do you kind of just fill out your opponent when you're rolling with them?
Yeah, I definitely say probably Deliva and close guard.
Okay.
Close guard is like the first guard that I learned, and it just always stuck with me until black belt. And I feel like it's a very dominant guard if you understand how to use it. So I use that. I use Deliva if I want to play like open guard.
And close is a super strong position, and I think it's one of those interesting things where, like, because it's such a fundamental position, we learned it so early, people sort of forget about it. And then if you run into someone that's really, really good at a full guard, like you said, it's a super dominant position and it's tough to deal with because you can't really move. And you have to break the guard open to really get anything going. So it's a super tough position to deal with. Favorite submission? Do you have like a favorite submission that you like to use when
Yes,
you're rolling?
armbar. I actually used to have this nickname when I was about a yellow belt. They called me Lady Armbar just because I'd always do arm bars. But same thing with the close guard. It was the first submission I learned, you know, super basic armbar. But it stuck with me throughout the years. And as I've evolved my game, I found that there are so many different ways to set those arm bars up, whether you're on top, you're on bottom, even if you're like stuck in a bad position, there's just always ways to get to that arm. So that's something that I really enjoy.
So here's a question for you. So you're talking about using some of these, you know, obviously there's advanced details and things like that, but you're using basic positions, basic techniques to finish, and you know, you're winning like big tournaments at a very advanced level. What do you think? What do you think makes the difference between taking a basic technique and making it advanced? Right. And again, we can think about that from the standpoint of like, okay, you get full guard, you have an arm bar, you learned them when you were a white belt, you learned them very young. So what makes it so that then you can still use those simple techniques, those basic techniques at a very high level? Like, what do you think makes that difference there?
Obviously drilling those techniques, try to drill them in realistic situations. Everyone learns it step by step, but something that I do is like active drilling. So it's pretty much where you're drilling, but your partner's just giving you like real reactions that you would be similar to sparring. So I do that a lot. Actually, we do that a lot at AOJ, just because sometimes it's hard going from learning and drilling a technique step by step than trying to do it in sparring, which is like
Agreed.
huge, gap that you're trying to fill, and it's really hard. But yeah, I like to do active drilling. It helps me, and also get to see my partner's different reactions. And yeah, like as you move up in the ranks, you also find like you just start studying more and figuring out different ways to set up those positions and like make it a little bit advanced for your setups.
Sure.
But yeah, I think sometimes like people forget about the basics. And they try to just do like fancy stuff. But the basics works. At Worlds, I had like a basic armbar from close guard when my partner stood up. But it's about the timing too. So I think just really understanding your partner's reactions and what they're gonna do from there.
Who's someone that you started training at a young age? Maybe some of the women in jiu-jitsu that you look up to, someone maybe that you faced at black belt that you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm competing against this person. Is there someone?
Honestly, I haven't yet, because the girls that I liked and I looked up to was Mackenzie Dern and Jazari Matuda. So I was hoping that by the time I got to black belt, I'd be able to fight one of them, but I never did because Jazari's not competing anymore and Mackenzie's doing UFC. But the cool thing is that Mackenzie came to train at AOJ a couple times, so I got to train with her. And then Jazari, I ended up just becoming really good friends with her, and we just still haven't gotten to train. But yeah, I thought that was cool. But yeah, right now I feel like we don't really have like any OG people that I used to look up to that are now still competing. But yeah, no, I'd love to. That was my dream growing up, to at least have like a super fight with him or something, just to test myself. But yeah.
So you have your match coming up with Danielle. So tell us about that. I believe that you have a win over her previously, right? So what is it like going into that match? It's a big match on a big stage with one, and having a win over her before. Like what's kind of going on with your mind going into that match?
Yeah. So yeah, I fought her 2 years ago on Who's Number One. I had that win over her. We had a good match. Now we're running it back for the second time. This time on a much bigger stage, on One Championship. It's going to be on Amazon Prime. We're going to be fighting in the cage in Singapore. It is a little bit more pressure just because it's like a bigger stage. But, I still feel very confident in myself. I feel like if you're the person that did win that match, you should still have some confidence in yourself going into this one. It's not like just because she's already done 3 fights with one that she should have the win over me. I don't think it matters. For her, she probably just feels more comfortable in that scenario.
Sure.
But I'm confident in my training, confident in like the work that I've been putting, and I'm gonna try to do what I did in the last match. Keep attacking. This time I want to come out with a submission though. That's something that bugged me 2 years ago. I got the win over her, but I didn't get the submission over her. She had a really good defense and she was very flexible. So any submission that I went after her, like it didn't stick. So now, after a couple times of rewatching that video and also just watching some of her recent matches, now I can kind of figure out like what submissions to try to attack on her that I think will work this time around.
Okay.
Any specific changes or anything that you're working on for that rule set? Because it's 10 minutes in a cage. There's no points. Is there anything specific that you're trying to focus on going into that match?
I'm pretty much, obviously going to be pushing the pace. I'm going to pretty much try to do whatever I can to put myself in like a dominant position where it can start leading me to a submission. I feel like my game's pretty well-rounded. If you want to wrestle and do takedowns, I can do takedowns. I also can pull guard and try to work on getting to the legs. I have very strong close guard. So, I'm pretty comfortable and confident, like whatever happens in the match. I feel like no matter where the match is going, I'll eventually come out with the win and I'll find a way. I'll figure it out to get to the submission.
Awesome. Well, I know you got to run short on time. Is there anything else? Where can people kind of check you out, follow you on social media, or see what you're up to?
Yeah, so my social media is Jessa Khan. Follow me on Instagram, TikTok. Pretty active on both of those. But yes, I'm looking forward to my fight at the end of this month with Danielle on One Championship. It's on Amazon Prime, so that's a huge thing for me to even have the opportunity to do that. And also, I'm just very happy to be a part of history. One Championship is doing a great job advertising martial arts, especially jiu-jitsu, and this card will actually be like an all-female card. So you've never seen that before, and I'm happy I could be a part of that. I could be the first person for women's jiu-jitsu to be having the title, having the belt at submission grappling. So that's something that's excites me and motivates me.
Very
Awesome.
cool.
Well, good luck to you. That's awesome, and good luck to you, and hope you snag an armbar.
Yeah, thank you.
So there was an interesting point in the podcast with Jessa, which I thought was worth sort of chewing on for a little bit longer, which is the idea of taking breaks. That's something that a lot of people struggle with because we sort of believe, wrongly so, that like if we're not like grinding to the max all the time, that we're somehow going to get worse or that we're not going to get better. Now, granted, she was still training the whole time. I mean, she was still plugging away, but there is a big difference from a competitor standpoint, especially if you're living this life, right? There is a difference when you're training and you're just trying to enjoy it versus training and you're trying to get ready for a competition. The intensity is way different.
Sure.
Like this is one of the reasons why I remember actually talking to a guy, Neil Ferguson. He's a historian. Neil Adams. He was a silver medalist in judo from Britain back in the day, and he did a judo seminar some years ago, and I had the chance to like sit down on a campfire and talk to him because we were basically hanging out on this property that was there, and so got the chance to talk to him and like just exchange ideas and listen to him. I talked to him as and basically was like with my listening ears on, right? Because I see him, he's like, sort of see him as an elder in grappling.
Yeah.
And I was asking about when he retired from competitive training and all that stuff. And he retired in his early 30s from competition. And he said that he had his best years of training and his best years of growth from like when he retired till he was about 40. He said his best training years. And he's like, because he wasn't training with such an intent on competing. He was just allowing himself, he's just playing and having fun. And from, young age up until that point, he'd always been training with a competition in mind. And so again, some of you guys listening to this probably aren't training with that level of like competitive focus all the time, right? Maybe periodically. But most of you guys that are listening to this aren't jiu-jitsu practitioners for a living, right? But that idea though is important because I think you can still take that gym and use it for something. So the idea of when you're training, making sure that it stays in some level where you have periods of it to make sure it stays fun and you allow yourself to like play, because again, play is the default that humans learn that's how we learn.
Yeah.
Like our default is learning through play, and we mess with stuff. That's how humans, that's how they learn by default. The idea of going to a class and being taught by someone like, and do this, and like in a classroom setting, that's an artificially created thing, right? We learn by like monkey see, monkey do, and we get told stuff by other people and we play with stuff. And again, when you start to get into a competitive element where you're trying to win or you have to get ready for this and the stress is there, it sort of closes off a lot of elements. And there's a lot of studies that have been done on sort of optimal learning conditions. And the idea behind it, from what I've read, is the optimal learning conditions are you have a certain level of arousal, right? You're excited to be there. You're ready to go. You're ready to get after it, right? But you're not so focused with the outcome that then it hinders you from playing around. And the idea is imagine like whenever you get really focused on something and you have tunnel vision, it closes off a lot of areas, right? Well, or let's say if you're running late for work and you've lost your keys and you cannot seem to find it, right? You get sort of focused in, and what ends up happening is if you start to get too intense and you get too focused on that outcome there, and so you're from the competitive sort of element to it, it sort of closes off the available options that you have.
Mhm.
So instead of being able to bridge new connections and everything else and sort of play with a wider range of information, you can't do that because you've closed in. You got tunnel vision. Anybody that's competed before has probably had a little bit of tunnel vision where like you watch the video and you're like, why didn't I just do this? It was right in front of me. On the flip side, though, you do have to have an element of arousal because you got to be getting after it, right? But anyway, going back to it, taking that break, I think it's a useful thing, whether that means you take a complete, week or two off, right? You're not going to lose everything. Or simply, if you notice that you are getting into this frustrated, I've got to do better. And that's sort of like the shoulds, right? When we give ourselves shoulds, that's about, I should be doing better. I should be doing this because I've been trained for this long. That's a problem because then it becomes, well, I should be doing this or what? Like what does that mean? Right? Like, again, who cares? And so I think that's a thing to think about or consider, is that if we're doing that, it gets in our way a little bit. And so then you got to take a break from that, at least from that mindset, and even say like, all right, I'm going to go in and I'm going to allow myself to lose and just play and let's just play the game. Let me just see what happens. And again, a lot of times it's in those moments where we sort of relax a little bit and we let up off the intensity that we then are allowed to play and be more effective. I know this from my own experience. And so it can be take a break from the actual training, but it can also be just take a break from a particular ultra intense, ultra competitive mindset to allow yourself to play a little bit more freely.
Yeah. I think pressure puts you like in a kind of in a corner in a box. Like if you're trying, well, it can, like if you're in her case, if you're trying to win a world championship or this or that, you don't really have time to explore. You're doing the same stuff over and over. You're drilling your best techniques, your A game. You're doing that over and over. You're drilling a game plan. Anybody that's trained for a tournament understands it's probably not the most fun. First of all, it's a lot more intense training. It's a lot more pressure. There's a lot less room for error. And then it's not really, you don't get to, like you said, play and explore and test stuff out and try stuff out. You don't get to play with new techniques. Like your training has to be very regimented and very scheduled to get this goal. And like for her, she mentioned something, like some of these kids have that pressure at a very young age, that they're basically at a young age deciding in some capacity with the, help of their parents to be homeschooled, which changes your like complete learning environment, right? Like your social environment changes. It's only like your social environment is jiu-jitsu. And that's kind of your work environment. And it's like, it puts them in a, it's a lot of pressure, but some kids love that and they do well. And, but I don't know, like, I think going back to it, the breaks are different, especially like taking a break, like if someone's like a recreational person, like if you take a complete break, I feel like sometimes that can be great, but you can take it too far. I like to feel
what's too far.
Well, if you take your mind completely off of jiu-jitsu and like forget about it,
for how
essentially,
long?
I don't know, a couple weeks.
I mean, to me, a week is fine. I mean, to me, like there's nothing wrong with a week. I mean, if you're even if you're recreational,
well,
what's wrong with a week?
Well, I don't know. If you are newer to jiu-jitsu and like it messes with your like kind of your consistency or your habit, I guess.
Well, sure, but I mean, if you're newer, then why the hell do you need a break yet?
Wow.
Like you've been training for 6 months. Like let's get to it.
Right.
When I'm saying break, I'm thinking about people that have been trained at least for a few years.
Yeah.
Like if you've been trained for 6 months and you need a break, you're like, man, I can't deal with this anymore.
Yeah.
Like maybe this isn't for you.
Right. I think like having some kind of connection, like if I'm taking like a break, like if I'm getting tattooed or something, it forced me to take a break because I can't be on the mat. So I'm usually like studying or I'm watching matches or I'll try to pop up in the gym, work out, still be in the area and kind of have my mind on jiu-jitsu in some capacity, even though my body's not really doing jiu-jitsu specifically as much, but there's value in it. It shows you kind of what you miss and what you love about it. And then it gives you a little bit more of a fire underneath you.
See, like when I want to do a break from something, I don't, and this is just difference of difference of for each person, right? Like if I take a break from something, I don't want to do it at all. I don't want to be around it. I don't want to think about it. I want complete just disconnection. Even like, I mean, like for instance, like some of the times where like I'm so ready to see my wife is after I've been away from her. Like I haven't seen her face. And like when I'm usually, like, for instance, we were at the Origin camp for a week, right? When I was there, I mean, I talked to her one night during the week and the rest of the week text a little bit. Like we're not big on like I'm not gonna like, how's your day going? Like, let me tell you exactly how my days go. Like, we'll talk a little bit during the middle of the week, catch up real quick. And then most time it's like just a quick text here or there, you know. And so when I get back, I'm like, I'm ready to see my damn wife, you know. If like I was constantly like texting with her, calling or whatever, by the time I get home, there's not going to be any like absence from her, you know. Like, oh, I just got done talking to you for 2 hours last night. And with jiu-jitsu, like when I like kind of get away from it sometimes, and which doesn't really happen much, but I mean, like there are times where, for instance, I remember I had like a little bit of like a sickness. You know, I don't really know what it is, some virus or whatever. I remember it was like, I was like, well, I'm going to take this week. I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to watch movies. I'm going to read books, go for walks, like everything away from everything that I normally do.
Yeah.
And then when I came back, I'm like, I'm ready to like get back after it. I'm ready to like watch tape. I'm ready to do stuff. Because there was my battery had been recharged. Because I feel like, you know, if I'm still studying, sometimes that's fine. And again, everybody's different. For me, and again, I do it like every day, so sometimes maybe that's a difference too. But for me, like having like a complete week disconnected from that thing, it makes me want to do it so badly, because like when I come back, I'm like, oh man, I miss this. You know what I mean? I really miss being able to do this. And I think that even for people that like, you know, even when COVID hit, you had you were forced to whatever, and you realize how much you missed it. So I think having a little bit of disconnection, it's not going to hurt you. Now, if you start taking off like, well, I'm going to take off like months, well, you know, maybe there's a certain point where it's going to affect you, but like a week off, it's not going to affect anything. In fact, for a lot of people, if you're one of those people that trains their face off, you might find, which a lot of people do, that if they take a few days off or even a week off and they come back, they feel better when they come back. They're like, man, I feel great, because your body had a chance to actually fully heal. Because if you think about like, okay, like let's say if you train several times, like 5 days a week or 4 days a week, like a really hardcore hobbyist, and you're lifting weights or something, you know, like that day of rest in between, it's not healing your body up completely. You're still banged up. You're still like, your body is still like, you're still in the hole dealing with this stuff. So if you take off a couple of days of like solid rest, you come back and you're, man, I feel friggin' amazing. This is why, like before competitions, I tell people to like no rolling the week of, you know, maybe Monday, but like no rolling the rest of the week, and just see how you feel. And like, I've never once had anybody come up and tell me, man, I felt terrible when I rolled on Saturday. Like almost every time every time I've at least told someone to do that, they followed it. They're like, man, I felt great. I had so much energy this weekend. But again, that doesn't really constitute necessarily not doing anything. You drill and stuff, but anyway, going back to it.
Yeah. The breaks can be very different. And I think one thing, if you're like, your body's beat up, you don't just want to like not do anything either. You want to maybe do some things working on your mobility. You want to go get a massage. You want to, you know, focus on sauna, whatever it is, do some stuff that makes you feel, walk, active recovery, that kind of stuff. Sometimes it like drives me nuts when people are like, oh, I'm injured, so I'm just not going to do anything. I'm going to rest. Unless it's like an injury where like you're not supposed to move it. Like you should be like, your body responds well to like pain-free motion and activation, things like that. So like if you're injured, you know, obviously some rest is helpful, but too much can set you back too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just getting up and doing whatever you can is important.
Whatever you can within limits and within comfort. And but rest, I think whenever I've had to take, you know, forcibly to take a rest, I've always felt like I'm ready to get back. And then someone's like, oh man, it's like, it's going to be a tough training session or something like that. But then once you do it, okay, then like, I want to do it again. And you kind of feel recharged. So for sure. It's different for everybody. Like we said, for her, she's a high level competitor that like is literally living on the mats.
High level competitor all day. She's young.
So,
right. It's like, it just a different animal from someone who's like, you know,
training like what, 7-8 hours a day in some capacity.
Well, she's on the mat 7 or 8. Because teaching, it's like
teaching is exhausting.
Well, just teaching in general, you're giving your energy to people.
It's a lot of mental energy.
It's maybe not as hard physically, but mentally it's a lot more draining.
For sure. Yeah. And I think I mean, it's obviously, it's like, if I ever have like a session where I'm like working, you know, doing physical therapy with someone, a lot of times I'm just exhausted because I give them like so much of like brain power and so much, you know, it's not so much physical, but like I do feel like physically exhausted sometimes.
Well, sure. Well, even like just sort of on a side tangent, I'm like good at those. That's what I do. There was I think it was like an essay from like, or not an essay, but an article like Winston Churchill wrote back in like the 1800s, like late 1800s, like 1890s or something. And he was, that guy, by the way, was like an orator. Like he was renowned for his ability to speak. Like people would come, and even if they disagreed with his policies, they'd like, or his, what he was doing, they wanted to come hear him speak because it was entertaining. But he talked about like, you know, if you're going to speak and you want someone to have an emotion, you should be in that emotion yourself when you're speaking. You know, and I think about that too as a coach. Like if you're going to teach and you want someone to have an emotion with their training, like you want them to be excited or whatever, then you should be excited about what you're showing.
Sure.
If you come in there and you're like, hey guys, you know, you're like kind of down, don't expect anyone else to be excited. Right. And so you have to be there, and like, so you have to turn your volume up a little bit, right? Your energy up a little bit. And when you're doing that, you're burning through it. And with kids, even more so, because you're dealing with kids who have a, you know, again, a relatively shorter attention span than adults. And they have to be taught a little differently in most cases, but you have to turn it up a little bit so that they can get excited about it. But I guess another sort of idea to take away from what we're talking about too is also be mindful of you. Like if you're listening to this and you're like, maybe I'm burned out, maybe I need a break, whatever, you need to be mindful of you and yourself, because again, everybody's different. And the way that everybody's going to respond is differently. Maybe you don't need a full complete break. Maybe you want to take a break, but you want to study and sort of just set back physically. Or maybe you're like me and you need a complete break from all of it. You just want to do nothing for a little bit. That's okay. Figure out what works for you. And again, there's no right or wrong. You can sort of take the ideas and then you test them out yourself like a technique. Maybe the technique works for you, maybe it doesn't. Take the ideas, maybe they work for you, maybe they don't. Or maybe you make them like hybrid. You change them a little bit based upon what you want to do, and sort of take it for that.
Yeah, breaks can be helpful for sure.
So yeah, guys, that's the idea. So again, hopefully you guys enjoyed the podcast today. Hopefully you took something from it. And again, big thanks to our sponsors for helping make the podcast happen. Charlotte's Web CBD. If you guys have never tried CBD, again, I encourage you to give it a whirl, see what kind of effect it has on you. Again, it's a supplement that is one of those things where I just say this with anything, like everybody's a little bit differently, or everybody's a little bit different. You know, some people are super responsive to stuff like me. I'm one of those people. Like you can give me the minimal dose of pretty much anything, and I respond to it. I don't need the maximal dose. Give me the little bit.
You're sensitive.
I'm sensitive. Give me that sensitivity or whatever. So I'm super sensitive to stuff. And so you know, again, you can be like that, or you might be the other type of person where you like can do the maximum dose and you don't really, you have to feel it there. But anyway, I encourage you to try it out, see what kind of effect it has on you. Again, if you guys want to get your own supply of CBD for the month and try it out, go to their website at charlesweb.com. The promo code is Chewjitsu, CHEWJITSU 20. You use the code at checkout. It'll give you 20% off the order. And again, they have tinctures, which are little eyedroppers. They've got THC-free versions of it because, again, hemp and THC-free are essentially, it's like, you know, from what I understand, it's like the same damn plant. It's just they're
like sister.
Yeah, they're just done slightly differently. And so again, there's trace amounts of that stuff of THC in the CBD product. But again, they have a THC-free product, which is still full spectrum. So you get a lot of the benefits of the different compounds that are in the regular CBD. But again, try it out, see what you think, and kind of go from there. Also, thanks to Epic Roll, rollbjj.com. Again, as I mentioned earlier in the episode, we will be doing a new batch of Jiu-Jitsu rash guards and shorts coming out in the near future. I'll let you guys know when that is. And again, I'll be doing them with Epic Roll again. I'm a big fan of Matt's products. He does a really good job with them. Good quality, cool designs, good customer service. And again, if you were looking to get a new rash guard, new set of shorts, a gi, or some new shirts, or whatever might be jiu-jitsu related, he's got a ton of different gear and apparel. You can go to his website at epicrollbjj.com. The promo code is Chewjitsu, CHEWJITSU, at checkout for 15% off. And again, if you want to support the podcast directly, guys, you can go to our Patreon, patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. Upon joining, you'll get the access to the library of content we built for you. Hundreds of episodes of stuff, everything from seminar recordings to warm-up routines that we've recorded specifically for jiu-jitsu people. And then you'll also get access to an ad-free version of the podcast, and it helps support the podcast for a very inexpensive price. So check it out, see what the price is. If you're cool with that, sign up to support the podcast and go from there. And if you want to get my daily email that I send out to the Chew crew, you can join it by going to my website at chewjitsu.net, CHEWJITSU.net. It's .net because .com is taken. And /join, JOIN. And upon joining, you will get access to a couple of ebooks that I've given away or giveaway for joining. One is on developing a game plan, and the other one is on active and passive drilling strategies to implement new techniques and blast through training plateaus. So if you're one of those people that's hitting like a sticky point in your game, I almost universally think that it's almost always that you're probably just committing a few mistakes that can be easily corrected with some good drilling that you can do both if you have control of your training and even if you don't. And again, you can go to my website and get that free ebook. And then upon joining, you'll get my daily email where I send out some ideas on training, philosophy, whatever it might be that is going on in my, I wanted to say bearded noggin, but my head's not really bearded. My well-coiffed noggin, coiffed. It's your hair, coiffed. And again, you can unsubscribe at any time, but otherwise you get the email, and I send exclusive offers and discounts through that as well. And otherwise, guys, that is the podcast. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and we will talk to you guys next time.